Energy is one of the strategic topics in economic growth and development of the countries. But the unregulated use in fossil fuels is destroying the environment. And because of this problem, governments around the world are working on alternative energies to help the environment and their countries. Mexico right now is in the making of a new ethanol plant in Tabasco, but how can they do it and how can they implement ethanol in all the country? Well, to know this, we are going to compare Mexico with two pioneers in this matter, Sweden and Brazil. If Mexico succeeds in this matter, maybe in a distant future we can get rid of fossil fuels and dependence on it.
Brazil is the world's number 2 ethanol producer and the leading ethanol exporter, using sugarcane as its feedstock. Brazil has a natural advantage in ethanol production. It has a vast, unused or little-used land area that can be converted to agricultural production. In addition, its tropical climate is well suited for sugarcane production. The Sugarcane Technological Center is the leading research center for sugarcane and ethanol in Brazil. It is responsible for over 80% of the research and development activities in this area. Brazil has made substantial investments in research to improve sugarcane varieties in recent decades. The research has produced varieties more resistant to drought and pest, along with higher yields and higher sugar content. During the last 30 years, sugar cane yields have increased threefold. Dedini Corporation is Brazil's largest builder of ethanol plants. They are developing a process that can convert the cellulose from bagasse tops and leaves into sucrose for ethanol production. This technology has the potential to almost double the ethanol production from an acre of sugarcane.
Brazil is proving itself a world leader in environmental reform on several fronts, having reduced deforestation to a fifth of its peaks in the 1990s. This country is creating amazing fortunes by developing the most biofuel-based infrastructure in the world from sugarcane-based ethanol. It spends what is necessary to develop the infrastructure and offer tax incentives to encourage a nationwide eco-friendly economy. As a result, Brazil has decreased oil imports from more than 80% in the 1970s to essentially zero today. Half of all cars on the road today in Brazil are flex fuel, capable of running on 100% ethanol, or a blend of ethanol and gasoline. Last year, over 80% of Brazil's new car sales were flex fuel. Brazil's ethanol emits as much as 90% less carbon emission than gasoline. Currently, the United States version is corn-based, which may cause more environmental harm, including carbon emissions during conversion and transportation, than petroleum, in addition to raising food prices. Luckily, corn ethanol is only one piece of biofuel policy that could challenge Brazil's leadership if we stop listening to the oil companies' excuses.
So we learned about Brazil and sugarcane. But besides that, what can we do here in Mexico? Well, our friend James is going to explain
We
that to
started by
us.
putting aside all traditional ways of making bioethanol. We didn't really want to make it out of crops grown and shipped from the other side of the world. And then we noticed how all around us there's energy that is literally thrown to waste, bio-waste. The kind of leftovers which bakeries, dairy factories, breweries and numerous other food producers dump in landfills by the ton. The main challenge was transportation. Traditionally, the waste gets transported to one huge ethanol plant, which is costly and time-consuming. In other words, completely wasteful. That's when we understood we needed to turn around our way of thinking. We didn't want to build one gigantic ethanol plant, but many small ones instead. If the waste mountain won't come to the plant, let's bring the plant to the waste mountain. This thought brought about a completely new way of making bioethanol, dispersed production. By building small ethanol units next to these factories, the biowaste and other leftovers don't get sent to landfills anymore. Instead, through a very efficient process of fermentation, they're distilled into 85% alcohol. Even the energy to power this process comes from renewable resources. The leftovers from the fermentation process can also be used as feed for animals. And since the bioethanol plants are close to both factories and farms, we save on transportation. The same container trucks that restock petrol stations are used to move the ethanol from these small units to a larger plant. On their way back from the petrol stations, they simply fill their tank with ethanol, so we avoid driving empty trucks around. The ethanol needs to be boosted so it can be blended with petrol. We do that in a separate dewatering unit where the ethanol is turned into almost pure alcohol. Thanks to today's advanced technology, this process consumes very little energy. That's the idea behind ST1's dispersed ethanol production. We scatter small units all around the world next to food factories that produce bio-waste and farms that can use the leftovers. We keep an eye on energy consumption and we keep the environment clean. This is how we create the world's cleanest bioethanol without producing any extra greenhouse gases.
Now let's see what Sweden has to say about them.
The uses of heavy vehicles are increasing, and this makes a local and global problem. With this in our minds, how can we replace this harmful diesel? One alternative that Sweden did is using the EG95, a biofuel based in ethanol that can be used for heavy vehicles. A company is actually switching this fuel by a renewable one. This company is the Swedish Kill and Friskexpressen that is in charge of supermarket interchanges. The EG95 is now a suitable alternative to switch diesel with another source of fuels. To make ethanol work as a fuel in a vehicle, it actually requires a small engine modification, in which Scania, a corporation specialized in buses, has many years of experience with.
On June 16, 2009, the Swedish Parliament approved the government's new energy and climate strategy, described as Europe's most ambitious strategy to improve energy efficiency and cut greenhouse gas emissions. Sweden thinks that for 2050 the country will be carbon neutral. In Sweden, they use rabbits as biofuel because there was a plague and the authorities didn't know what to do, and the easiest way for them was to kill them and use them as fuel. The dead bodies of the rabbits were incinerated and transformed as biofuel. And in part, this was good because also having too many rabbits damaged the environment, the trees, or other species. So this was mutualism because both the environment and us were benefit.
So, now that we heard about what Sweden and Brazil are doing, well, we can think, what can Mexico learn from them? And that's an interesting question that the government has to answer. But for now, I think that we should follow the steps of Brazil because we have the environment, the weather, the soil, and the manpower to do this. So, we expect to have ethanol in a few years.